Hey guys, welcome back to Reignited and our twin charged Magnum build. Now I know it has been a minute since I put out a video on this thing. You can be forgiven for thinking that I haven't been working on it, but in fact I've been working like crazy on this thing. As you guys know, when you're finishing up a project, there's a ton of little details and some of that stuff just isn't very interesting to film. I filmed some stuff and I was like, you know what, if I don't want to watch this, I don't think you guys want to watch this either. So I buttoned up a ton of stuff here, ran a bunch of hoses and lines. I've rewired the entire engine bay here for the new sensor locations and the new setup that we have. So pretty much everything is ready for final assembly, and that's what we're going to be doing in this video. Final assembly, we're gonna get that supercharger on there for good. We gotta wire up our gauges in this thing, and we've gotta get the HP tuner set up, and we are going to try to have our first start in this video. Let's hope it goes according to plan. Let's get into it. Now, I've talked a lot about how much stuff is really in this engine bay here, but now you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. I have a multitude of hoses and lines, and yes, all of those are necessary to actually run this thing. So pretty much most of these are plumbed right now and run. I gotta have their final locations for a lot of my boost lines here once the intake manifold and the supercharger is in place. So that's the first thing we're gonna do. I gotta admit, it feels weird to actually be bolting this intake down after so many times of taking it on and off and changing and modifying things on it. Now, one of the things that's nice about this intake, as you can see, is with these custom plates that I had machined up, I can still use the factory gaskets for this thing, so it should seal really nicely. So one thing you'll notice here is that I'm not actually going to use a gasket on the supercharger surface. What I am going to use is what's called 3-bond. It's basically a Mopar version of like Honda Bond. Essentially, it's a very strong silicone adhesive. This stuff is very, very powerful, and I have no question that it's going to seal this surface properly. So I'm going to use this on the base of the supercharger and also on the throttle body flange as well. The Eagle has landed. So if you haven't been following along on this project, I want to give you a quick recap of exactly what this is. This is a 2005 Dodge Magnum RT, so it has the Hemi engine in it. However, this is not the original engine. This engine is actually a 2015 Hemi 5.7. There's some good upgrades that come along with that, notably way better cylinder heads, and also I'm able to use a more modern camshaft. Now this engine actually has a 6.4 camshaft, even though it is just a 5.7. It's something I've done before. I think it makes a nice pickup without being kind of too on the edge, because I really want some good solid mid-range with this thing, so that's why I went with that. Now I also went ahead and got rid of the MDS system. I do have just regular lifters in there now, no MDS lifters. I did open up the piston ring gap to be more boost friendly because I did not change the compression ratio. This engine is still running on the stock 10.5 compression ratio, which could be a bit aggressive for running this boost setup like it is, but I'm willing to roll with it. Now, to get to the good parts here, this is an Eaton M112 supercharger off of a Mustang Cobra, like an 0304. It might be a little bit small for a 5.7, but it's what I had, and I still think it looks pretty good on there. Now the turbocharger, that is a turbo from VS Racing, and I can never remember the specifications for it, so I'll go ahead and put those on the screen right now. Now I'm using a VS Racing 50mm wastegate. I have a VS Racing 50mm blow-off valve here. And that's pretty much the story of it. One of the unique things I did is I went ahead and converted the front of this engine to run off of the Hemi E-Torque timing cover. And that gives me the capability to run an 8-rib belt like the 8-rib pulley that came stock on the M112 blower. So no 6-rib belt for me. I have the 8-rib, should give me plenty of grip or surface area around the pulley. I shouldn't have to worry too much about belt slip on this setup. Got a D-Works X2 fuel pump module in the back. I have a D-Works fuel filter and a fuel pressure regulator from them. I'm using Hellcat fuel injectors on this thing. Got a Motion Raceworks catch can on here with dual 10AN fittings. So yeah, it's a pretty solid setup overall. I hope it works. All right, you guys, we have done it. This is essentially what this car is going to look like in its final form. Now, there's a couple of little minor tweaks that need to be made, and I'm not going to put the front bumper on until after we get everything fired up, but all of the hoses are routed, everything is plumbed, all of the fluids are in. This thing is ready to start. So we've kind of moved on to installing the HP tuners. Now, a lot of guys have said, hey, we want to see the whole process of you doing the HP tuners. I want to be clear about something. I am 100% a novice about that, and I don't want to be giving you guys bad information. So I don't want to say, here's what I'm doing, and then have you follow what I'm doing and have it be incorrect. So basically, I've just been doing a lot of research on the HP Tuners forums to try to see, you know, what's actually going to work for this combination, what's at least going to give me a baseline. All I'm trying to do here is get it sorted enough to where it will fire on its own and run essentially. The actual tuning will be done by a professional. So that's all I'm trying to do with this thing. So I feel like I can get that far. I hope I can, but that's kind of why you guys won't really see me working through the process of working with HP Tuners, because I'm just kind of fumbling around in the dark. It's a lot to take in all at once, and the platform is a lot different than I thought it would be. It's not like, okay, you're running these injectors, just plug in these values and it'll work just fine. It doesn't work like that at all, like I thought it did. So definitely different. Also, you may note that I did actually finally build myself this heat shield that I always said I was going to build. And you can see that it actually protects my valve cover and the coils here from that exhaust. So it just goes back here, not super far. It's not like it tucks down behind it or anything, but I don't know. We'll have to see how effective it really is. Also, I did calculate the pulley ratio on this thing. I should be making around 7 pounds of boost with just the supercharger. It might be a little bit less because I'm at 4,200 feet elevation, so it might not bring it all the way to that point. Maybe 6.5, somewhere in there. And then the turbocharger itself, the wastegate, I had the wastegate spring set at 14 pounds. Now you might think that it's gonna compound each other and add 7 to 14, but my actual reference line going to the wastegate is coming straight off of the intake manifold, so it's going to already account for the 7 pounds that the supercharger is providing. So I'm hoping for a total of around 14 pounds for this thing, kind of to get my feet wet and see what it's capable of before I try to start pushing this thing any further. So as you guys know, I kind of built this crazy exhaust here because I wanted the best of both worlds. I wanted this thing to be quiet when I wanted it to be quiet, but loud when I wanted it to be loud. So I installed these electric DigiPower exhaust cutouts. So I have dual 2.5-inch cutouts here coming off of a single 4-inch pipe. So we should have plenty of free air flowing here when I need to. Now, what's really cool about this is with the DigiPower setup, you can actually hook it up to your phone. So it also has a little remote key fob if you want to use that instead, but I think that's a really fantastic setup to be able to do this off your phone. Such a cool thing. I love having this capability. I think these are going to be awesome. Okay, somewhat hard to see, but this is the HP Tuners VCM scanner. This is what shows you all of your actual engine data so you can watch it as it's happening, your data logs and stuff like that. You'll notice my RPM value here. So we have good RPM signal, so that's a great start. One thing you guys haven't seen yet is I do have these digital gauges I installed though. These are AEM digital gauges. On the top here, I have fuel pressure, then I have my wideband, then I have my boost gauge because I want to have these things readily available to me while I'm driving. Now, if you'll notice the fuel pressure gauge here, so kind of tough to see there, but basically the spec for these injectors is 58 PSI. And I've got it set at 59, so basically exactly on. So we have our basics in place. I think it's time to plug in our fuel injectors, give this thing a try. Okay, 100% legitimately, this is my very first attempt at actually trying to fire this vehicle. Whew, I'm nervous. What? All right, it's kind of acting like it wants more fuel here. Yeah, I think it wants more fuel, so I'm gonna mess around with the startup table, try to add a little bit more. You know what's amazing about this? You know what's absolutely awesome about this? Okay, so if you don't know, like I said, this is a 2015 Hemi engine. I had to swap the crank trigger wheel on the crankshaft from the original 05 crank onto this engine, and guess what? It reads perfectly. That timing appears to be exactly identical, so it was a straight swap. That was a huge unknown on this process, and the fact that this thing is firing right now tells me that that is just fine. It was an assumption I made, and it worked out, so very excited about that. This thing is almost sort of running. I gotta do some tweaks on it. We'll keep trying. Okay, I went ahead and added a bit more fuel to the startup base injector. Let's see what happens. Ooh. Well, it runs for a moment longer. All right, you guys, obviously it just barely runs, but right now I cannot resist opening up these exhaust cutouts to see what this thing's going to sound like with those things open. So I'm gonna fire it up a couple of times with them closed and then open them up and see what happens. That is mental! Alright, I was not expecting it to be that loud with the cutouts open. Let me put you around back of the car so you can hear it back there. Oh my God. I mean, it's crazy. It starts. It starts. It doesn't run, not well, but it does start, and it gives me a baseline to work off of so I can keep tweaking this thing, keep modifying it, and actually get it to the point where it'll run on its own, and that way I can actually take it to a tuner to get this thing to make some power. Like I said, I'm not trying to set the world on fire. Yes, it is a twin charge setup, but I just did it as a technical thing to see if I even could do it. So I have no idea what kind of power numbers I'm actually looking for with this thing. What I'm looking for is something reliable that I can use without it blowing up immediately. Now I'd like to push it later on, but for right now, I'd like it to run for a little bit. Seems how I just started it for the very first time. Kind of like it to stick around for a little bit. Plus, as you guys know, I do have that drag and drive event, the Redwood Rally, coming up at the end of September. So I have until that time to actually dial this thing in, get some track time with it before we actually go on this trip. So it seems, 2 months, it seems like we have a fair bit of time. It's really not. I only have very limited amount of time to actually work on this on the weekends, so it's not a lot of time. It's really gonna come down to the wire, I'm sure of it. But this is a massive, massive, massive weight off my shoulders. Hearing this thing actually fire, I'm gonna be actually able to move it out of the shop. Guys, you haven't seen this thing move out of the shop, and I think it's been 10 months, something like that. It's been in here. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry I'm so excited about it just barely firing up, but this is huge for me. I just feel a tremendous sense of relief, and now it is just a matter of tuning and just doing the easy stuff at this point. I shouldn't say easy, but it's more technical minded and it's not so much work. And so basically I can come out here, I can pick away at it here and there when I get time to do it, and just keep modifying it a little bit, trying things, seeing where it goes from there. Whew, man, what an amazingly long road this has been. You guys have been there with me every step of the way. I hope you guys are very excited about this. I hope you love the way it sounds. I think it sounds absolutely mental with the exhaust cutouts open. I was not expecting it to sound that rowdy. That really surprised me. So, and of course, with the cutouts closed, it sounds exactly like I expected it to. It sounds like kind of a stock Hemi engine because it's going routing through basically in a stock exhaust. So, oh my gosh, this has been, what a night this has been. So excited for this. Thank you guys for sticking with me on this project. We will keep going. We will see what this car can actually do. I want to thank you guys again. We'll see you next time on Reignited.